Hello everyone, welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thank you for joining us. Today's little video comes from a real life example, a real case that I recently had to deal with. Now, I have to deal with these once in a while, and this has happened quite a bit around the country, but let's talk today about how much trouble are you in if TSA finds a firearm in your carry-on bag. Okay, before we get rolling, you guys know the drill. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button down below. If you want to stay up to date on all issues related to your Second Amendment rights, either on the Washington state level or on the nationwide level, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. And if you want to get notified when we post new videos, go ahead and click the little bell logo down below. Now, the idea behind today's video actually comes from a real life example, a real client of mine. We're gonna call her, for the sake of today's story, her name is Gina. Now, her real name is not Gina, but that's what we're gonna call her today. Gina lives in a beautiful part of the country, North Idaho, just on the other side of the state line. So individuals who live in North Idaho will frequently, when flying domestically or internationally, are going to fly out of the Spokane International Airport. Well, Gina had a flight scheduled to California one day, and as so often is the case, they're scrambling around at the last minute. She decides she needs to change her carry-on bag, takes the items from the bag she was going to use, dumps them into a larger bag, and away they go. Unfortunately, Gina left her Smith & Wesson M&P 9 in her carry-on bag, or in that particular bag, which had now become her carry-on bag. They check in at the front desk, they go through TSA, and as she's going through TSA and her carry-on bag's going through the scanner, one of the TSA agents turns to her and says, "Ma'am, did you forget something in your bag?" And she, of course, has a very clueless look, and he turns the screen around so that she could see the digital image, and, of course, there's a clear outline of a handgun in her bag, which, of course, she immediately exclaims, "Oh, my God, I can't believe this. I didn't know it was there." And there's no doubt in my mind, if you guys knew Gina the way I know her, that she did not intentionally do this. And I think the reaction from all those at TSA who interviewed her that afternoon also was, it was very obviously a mistake. So the question is, and this happens frequently on 4th of July weekend, just this year, it happened 44 times around the United States. You can just Google for yourself how many times TSA is finding firearms in carry-on bags, and I can assure you that a large majority of these people are not doing so intentionally. Flying domestically has not become that dangerous yet. It's become rather miserable, but it does not necessarily become that dangerous yet. So how much trouble are we in then when this situation happens? Because Gina is not the first person I've talked to that has accidentally had this occur. Well, there are two ways that we can get in trouble, and in Washington state it comes from the RCWs, but there's also trouble on the federal level thanks to the good folks at the FAA. So let's talk about what problems Gina had here in Washington state. Well, under RCW 9.41.300, she was charged with the gross misdemeanor of possession of a firearm in a prohibited area. Now, that statute reads as follows. It is unlawful for any person to enter the following places when he or she knowingly possesses or knowingly has under his or her control a weapon. And then in subsection E of the statute, in the long list of places where you cannot possess a firearm, subsection E clearly states, the restricted access areas of a commercial service airport designated in the Airport Security Plan approved by the Federal Transportation Security Administration, including passenger screening checkpoints at or beyond the point at which a passenger initiates the screening process. These areas do not include airport drives, general parking areas, and walkways and shops and areas of the terminal that are outside the screening checkpoints and that are normally open to unscreened passengers or visitors to the airport. Any restricted access area shall be clearly indicated by prominent signs indicating that firearms and other weapons are prohibited in that area. And clearly, for any of you who've been to the Spokane airport, or any airport for that matter, we clearly know where the TSA checkpoint areas begin. And yes, they clearly post signs saying that firearms and other weapons are no longer prohibited beyond that point. So Gina was facing a gross misdemeanor charge. Now, what was the saving grace for Gina in this is, and let's go back and take a look at what the statute first states, because the statute states, It is unlawful for any person to enter the following places when he or she knowingly possesses or knowingly has under his or her control of a weapon. And it is that inclusion of the language knowingly that was Gina's saving grace, because obviously the TSA, and to their credit, wrote very accurate accounts of what occurred and what Gina's reactions were. They themselves believed that it had been done in accident, and they were kind enough and honest enough to put that in the report. This is what's called a mens rea crime, which is a fancy Latin way of saying that this crime has a mental element that you have to prove. If you're the prosecuting attorney, you have to prove, in this case, that an individual knowingly possessed the firearm at that checkpoint or beyond, or that it was their intent to do so. Okay, and in this case, Gina was what we call in unwitting possession. Yes, it was her firearm. Yes, she was at most times in control of it. But at that particular moment, she was unaware that she was in possession of it because she was unaware that she had left it in that particular bag. So that absolved Gina of any criminal liability. Now, she was looking at up to a year in jail and a $5,000 fine. She was being prosecuted by the city of Spokane. Was she actually looking at a year in jail and a $5,000 fine? No, Gina had absolutely no criminal history. She was in her 60s, but she was looking at a potential criminal offense. So, happy ending for Gina, right? Well, not so fast, because the FAA also sent Gina a notice. Now, the FAA does not have authority to place a person in jail or convict them of a crime, but what the FAA, like many federal agencies, has the ability to do is to fine the hell out of you. So Gina was assessed a $2,400 fine. Let me say that again, $2,400 fine. Now, the applicable Code of Federal Regulation, that is the CFR, that created this financial liability for Gina is 49 CFR section 1540.111. We'll put the link for that down below. Now, that particular federal regulation reads as follows. On an individual's person or accessible property prohibitions. Except as provided in paragraph B of this section, an individual may not have a weapon, explosive, or incendiary on or about the individual's person or accessible property. And the statute then defines where that person cannot have a weapon on him, and it includes the following. 1. When performance has begun of the inspection of the individual's person or accessible property before entering a sterile area or before boarding an aircraft for which screening is conducted under this subchapter. 2. When the individual is entering or in a sterile area. Or 3. When the individual is attempting to board or on board an aircraft for which screening is conducted under a separate section of the Code of Federal Regulations. And then, of course, on an individual's person or accessible property would, of course, include your carry-on luggage. Now, what is this statute, what is this Code of Federal Regulation lacking? What it's lacking is that a person must knowingly do this. In fact, this is what we now call a strict liability crime, which means all that has to happen is the act itself occur. If the person is somehow responsible for the act occurring, they are guilty of that offense. Now, in this case, she was not found guilty of a crime, but she was fined under this federal regulation, and she had to pay $2,400 to the good folks at TSA. Listen, the moral of the story is part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we preach here all the time at Washington Gun Law, is we have to know where our firearms at every moment of the day and exactly what condition those firearms were in. I think Gina is a wonderful person, and I think in most instances she is a lawful and responsible gun owner. But she left that firearm unattended in, yes, her own handbag, and she didn't have young children in the house or anything like that, so there was nothing irresponsible about that. But you are responsible for knowing where your firearm is at all times and knowing what condition that firearm is. Listen, I hope you never have to go through this situation. The bottom line is if you do accidentally carry a firearm through a TSA checkpoint, yes, you can be charged with a crime under state law. It could be difficult for the prosecution to prove you guilty, but do you really want to go through the headache of finding that out? And in all instances, I can assure you that the good folks at TSA will be assessing you a significant financial penalty. As a matter of fact, the Code of Federal Regulation that we're talking about does allow a fine up to $4,000. Listen, you may have more questions about this or anything else related to your Second Amendment rights. And if you do, don't ever hesitate to contact us at WashingtonGunLaw.com. Or, of course, you can call us directly at 425-765-0487. Listen, everyone, part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.